Welcome to Bold English Speakers. Unlock your confidence. Master English.
You know that really specific, incredibly universal type of panic we've all felt at least once?
Oh, absolutely. The freeze response.
Yeah, exactly. Like you could be sitting in this sleek, hyper-modern, glass-walled conference room. The air conditioning is just, a little too cold.
It always is.
Right? And you're sliding your freshly printed, meticulously formatted resume across this polished mahogany desk, and your palms are just sweating.
Or, totally different scenario, but the same feeling. You could be sitting right here in a soundproof studio.
Oh, yeah. Headphones clamped over your ears, staring down the barrel of a high-end studio microphone.
And the red recording light suddenly clicks on. You take a breath, you look across the table or into the camera lens, and someone says those 5 terrifying words.
Tell me about yourself.
It genuinely triggers this biological freeze or flight response. The context just shifts in a millisecond.
It really does. Suddenly, your own life story feels like this bizarre mystery you're desperately trying to solve in real time.
You start wondering, where you were actually born, or if you actually like any of the hobbies you listed.
Or if you even know how to speak English anymore. I mean, it is entirely baffling when you think about it, because you talk about yourself every single day.
Right. You share stories with your friends, your family, your colleagues at the water cooler.
Exactly. The narrative of your life is the one subject you are undeniably the world's foremost expert on. But the absolute second someone asks you to summarize it in a formal setting, your mind just goes totally blank. The hard drive crashes.
Well, the reaction is entirely psychologically normal because, the stakes have fundamentally changed.
Right, it's not just a chat anymore.
Exactly. When you're chatting with a friend, you're engaging in casual self-disclosure. There's no ultimate goal other than connection.
Right.
But when a hiring manager, or say an audience, asks you to tell them about yourself, it's no longer a casual inquiry. It's an evaluation.
You're suddenly tasked with, synthesizing decades of lived experience into this compelling, persuasive narrative right on demand.
And that terrifying transition is exactly what we are unpacking today.
Yes. Our mission for this deep dive, for you listening right now, is to completely master the art of the introduction and the architecture of storytelling.
We have gathered a massive, highly guarded stack of resources for you today.
We really have. We're pulling from the internal playbooks of executive recruiters at global firms like EY.
We're diving into the newsletters of top-tier tech operators, too.
Yeah, and we're cross-referencing all of that with expert podcasting guides from industry giants like Buzzsprout, Voice123, and Podcasting Business School.
We're going to decode exactly how you can pitch your story, hook your audience, and build a compelling narrative that actually sticks in the listener's brain.
Because the underlying mechanics of communicating your value are completely universal.
They really are. Whether you're trying to land your absolute dream job in corporate finance or, you're trying to launch a hit chart-topping independent show.
The psychological triggers you need to hit in your audience are identical. You're trying to capture attention, prove competence, and build trust in a highly compressed time frame.
So starting with the most high-stakes introduction of all, the job interview. We have this fascinating perspective from the global recruiting team at EY.
Oh, this part blew my mind. They point out something that completely shatters how most people view the beginning of an interview.
Right. The EY playbook explicitly refers to "tell me about yourself" as an icebreaker.
But it's an icebreaker with a massive, almost completely hidden agenda.
The casual nature of the question is an illusion by design. The data shows us that recruiters use this broad prompt to transition out of the initial awkward small talk.
Like the mandatory comments about the weather, the traffic on the way to the office, or, finding the parking garage.
Exactly. It feels incredibly conversational. It feels like a soft pitch.
But in reality, this is the exact moment the microscope turns on.
Because the question is so agonizingly broad, there is technically no wrong answer. And that lack of structure makes candidates drop their guard.
You walk in thinking, they just want to get to know me, the human being. They want to know my vibe.
And while you're talking freely, thinking you're just establishing a vibe, the interviewer is utilizing this unstructured time to deeply observe your baseline behavior.
Right.
They're scanning your body language, assessing your business attire, and most importantly, they are analyzing your thought organization.
Because without a specific prompt to guide you, the information you independently choose to share first tells the interviewer exactly what you prioritize.
It reveals your mental framework.
So for you listening right now, the translation of this is critical. When a hiring manager says, "Tell me about yourself," they are emphatically not asking for your life story.
No, they do not want to know about your childhood dreams of being an astronaut.
They do not need a rundown of your siblings, and they certainly do not need to know the names and broods of your pets.
The hidden question, buried beneath the pleasantries, is brutally simple. Why should we hire you?
That's it. That is the whole thing.
They are listening to your narrative to see if your specific professional journey, like the sequence of choices you've made over the last few years, aligns with the exact position they need to fill today.
They're looking for narrative fit, which leads us to the biggest mistakes people make when they try to answer this.
Oh, there are so many. We see this across all the executive coaching sources.
Yeah.
People usually fail this test in one of three spectacular ways.
First, they ramble.
Yes, they talk for 10 unbroken minutes, bringing in totally irrelevant personal details because they're nervous and just trying to feel the silence.
Second, they panic and give a 30-second non-answer that basically just states their current job title and stops abruptly.
Or third, and the recruiters in the EY text highlight this as the ultimate sin, they just sit there and read the resume out loud.
Bullet point by bullet point.
It is particularly agonizing for recruiters. The hiring manager already has the document sitting on the desk in front of them.
Right. They literally read it before you walked into the room.
If all you offer in your introduction is a chronological reading of dates and job titles, you have completely failed to synthesize your own value.
You're forcing the interviewer to do the heavy cognitive lifting of figuring out why your background matters to their company.
Exactly.
I always think of this like a movie trailer. If you treat the interview like a literal documentary of your life, they will tune out instantly. You have to treat your introduction like a trailer.
That is a great analogy.
Because a trailer doesn't show you every single scene from the film in chronological order. If it did, it would be boring, it would take too long, and it would give away the entire plot.
Right.
Instead, a masterfully cut trailer carefully selects the most exciting, emotionally resonant, and visually stunning parts of the movie.
It weaves those highlights together with a compelling voiceover and great pacing.
All designed to do one specific thing, make the audience want to buy a ticket. Your interview intro needs to act as the ultimate high-impact movie trailer for your career.
You are providing the highlight reel that promises a great feature film to come later in the conversation. And the stakes for delivering this trailer, effectively, are incredibly high.
Yeah, hiring managers universally report that the first 5 minutes of an interview shape their overall lasting impression of a candidate.
Which is terrifying. The first 5 minutes dictating the outcome of a multi-round interview process is a massive anchoring bias.
It really is. But it's the reality of human psychology.
We form judgments rapidly and spend the rest of our time looking for evidence to confirm those initial judgments.
So a confident, unrehearsed sounding delivery during this specific 5-minute window is crucial.
If you stumble here, if you sound defensive or disorganized, you spend the next 50 minutes of the interview trying to dig yourself out of a psychological hole.
The interviewer will view all your subsequent answers through a lens of skepticism, but if you nail the introduction, a halo effect carries you through the rest of the conversation.
They actively want you to succeed.
Okay, so knowing that the interviewer wants the movie trailer, that they're secretly asking, why should we hire you? How do we actually build the script for that?
Right, because a lot of people listening are probably thinking, they aren't Hollywood editors. They need a blueprint.
We turn to a highly effective framework highlighted by tech operator Andrew Young, which perfectly complements the EY recruiting playbook.
It is known as the Time Machine Framework.
Yeah.
And it comes with a strict, non-negotiable parameter.
The 3-minute rule.
3 minutes. Not a 10-minute monologue, not a 30-second blurb.
Why 3 minutes?
3 minutes is the biological sweet spot for human attention in a conversational setting before the listener's brain starts searching for an exit strategy.
Or their eyes just glaze over.
Exactly. The structure itself is divided into 3 distinct chronological phases: past, present, and future.
But the magic isn't just in listing the timeline, right? It's about the specific substance you inject into each of those phases.
Let's pull those apart. The past phase is about how you got to where you are. But Andrew Young is very specific here. You must outline your impact and your previous experiences.
You don't just say, I worked in customer service for 2 years.
No. You are defining the foundation of your expertise. What did you touch that grew? What did you build that lasted?
So you might say, in my previous role in customer service, I handled high-escalation client accounts, which fundamentally taught me how to de-escalate tension and redesign our feedback loop to reduce churn.
Yes, you are tying the past action to a specific, valuable outcome.
Then you immediately bring them into the present. Where are you now? But again, you don't just state your current job title.
You share your thought process. You explain the complex problems you are currently solving or the skills you are actively deploying on a daily basis.
You want to show them your current trajectory. Like, currently, I am leveraging that de-escalation experience to train new hires, and I'm actively managing a team of 5 to streamline our communication protocols.
And then, the grand finale of the time machine, the future.
This is where you connect the dots for the interviewer.
You talk about your career aspirations, but you tie them directly, almost exclusively, to this specific opportunity.
You're essentially telling them that everything in your past and everything you're mastering in your present has inevitably led you to this exact chair, talking to them about this exact role.
It creates a sense of narrative destiny. You say, I am now looking for an opportunity where I can continue scaling my leadership skills, which is exactly why I was so drawn to this senior management position at your firm.
Your focus on customer-centric growth perfectly aligns with the toolkit I have spent the last 3 years building.
That structure is bulletproof. It is short, it is focused, and it is entirely relevant to the listener.
But there's a massive trap here when people try to talk about their strengths, right? Like, people often struggle to talk about what they're good at without sounding painfully arrogant.
Or just totally cliche. The secret to navigating that, which is heavily emphasized in these playbooks, is that you never just claim a strength. You prove it with an example.
Adjectives are cheap. Stories are undeniable evidence.
Instead of sitting there and boldly claiming, I am an incredibly hard worker, which means absolutely nothing, you offer a narrative.
You say, last year, our department was suddenly short-staffed during our busiest quarter, so I volunteered to take on the onboarding of 2 new major client accounts while maintaining my normal daily responsibilities, ensuring we didn't miss a single deliverable.
Stories always beat adjectives. If you want them to know you are a leader, you do not declare yourself a leader. You tell a story where you organize a chaotic project.
If you want them to know you are organized, you describe the specific methodology you use to manage 5 competing deadlines.
If you're a fast learner, you explain the weekend you spend mastering a new software platform to save a failing presentation. You let the interviewer attach the adjective to you in their own mind based on the evidence you provide.
That brings up a huge anxiety point for a specific segment of our audience. What if you have no direct experience?
Yes.
Like, what if you are a student, or this is your first job out of school, or you're completely pivoting industries? The immediate fear is that you have no past to put into the time machine.
This is a very common fear, but it's based on a misunderstanding of what employers actually value. Even if you lack direct industry experience, you still have a story.
You have school projects, you have volunteer work, you have community event organization.
Or perhaps you spent years caring for family members while studying. Every single one of those experiences builds transferable skills.
Communication, leadership under pressure, extreme time management, lateral problem solving.
Exactly. And when building this past, present, future arc, there's a crucial nuance we pull from the resources over at Product Lessons.
This part's brilliant.
Most candidates, especially those with long resumes, focus entirely on what they did. I led a project, I managed a team, I shipped a feature. That is the doing.
But stellar, high-potential candidates, especially those lacking direct experience, focus just as much on what they learned.
The doing versus the learning. That completely shifts the gravity of the answer.
It changes the entire paradigm. There's a great insight in the Product Lessons material, quoting the CEO of Shopify, Toby Lutke.
Yes, his philosophy is that the reason you get a job is not necessarily because of everything you currently know, but because you seem like the kind of person who can figure it out.
Let that sink in for a second, because you seem like the kind of person who can figure it out. That takes an immense amount of pressure off anyone feeling imposter syndrome.
By focusing on what you learned in your previous environments, whether that was a college campus, a retail job, or a different industry entirely, you prove to the interviewer that your slope, your rate of cognitive growth, is incredibly steep.
You prove that you can be dropped into an unknown, chaotic environment, assess the variables, and just figure it out.
Adaptability is far more valuable than a static list of past duties.
The product lesson source pushes this even further by contrasting two different ways of presenting your career journey. They label them the polished LinkedIn feed approach versus the true time machine approach.
The polished feed is the default for most ambitious people. It is a sterile, heavily curated highlight reel of relentless victories.
I achieved this metric, I maximized that revenue, I grew this division by 30%.
It sounds impressive on paper, but spoken aloud, it is incredibly boring and emotionally flat.
It lacks humanity. The true time machine approach asks you to show the journey, and more importantly, the psychological and professional change you underwent.
You don't start your story at the top of the mountain planting the flag of victory. You start your story at the bottom of the mountain, looking up at how steep and terrifying the climb is. You show the struggle.
But wait, hold on. If the goal is to convince them to hire me, why on earth would I voluntarily walk into a high-stakes interview and highlight my struggles, my false starts, or my mistakes?
I know, it sounds crazy.
That sounds like willingly handing them a reason to reject me.
It feels counterintuitive,
Mm-hmm.
but the psychology of the interviewer dictates otherwise. When a hiring manager is presented with a perfectly sanitized, overly rehearsed narrative, what Product Lessons brilliantly refers to as confidence theater, they instantly become suspicious.
Because the human brain is evolutionarily wired to look for threats and inconsistencies.
Right. When a candidate's story lacks any friction or failure, the interviewer's subconscious defense mechanisms activate. They start silently screaming, "What is the catch? What are they hiding?"
You essentially trigger their defense mechanisms by being too flawless. They assume you lack self-awareness or you're actively deceiving them.
Precisely. They start wondering if you can handle inevitable corporate failure, if you can put your ego aside when challenged, or if you will actually be pleasant to work with when a project goes completely off the rails.
Which they always do.
Exactly. By voluntarily sharing a small struggle, a false start on a project, a scary plateau in your skill development, a miscalculation that you had to humbly correct, you humanize yourself.
You establish immediate, profound trust.
Shared struggle is the fastest way to bond with a stranger. It proves you have deep self-awareness, which is arguably the most highly sought-after soft skill in the modern workplace.
Big moments lionize us, but small moments humanize us. That is the true power of the time machine.
So you have your 3-minute structure, you focus on learning over doing, and you show the authentic climb up the mountain.
But how do these exact same rules apply when your audience isn't just one hiring manager sitting across a mahogany desk, but potentially thousands of passive listeners tuning in from all over the world?
Like on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, the translation between those two mediums is entirely seamless.
It really is.
The underlying principles of hooking an audience in a corporate interview translate directly to the audio medium of podcasting. If we analyze the comprehensive guides from Voice 123 and the strategies from podcasting expert Rob Cressy, the mechanics of proving your value in the first few seconds remain identical.
Because that 3-minute time machine pitch works beautifully when you have a captive audience of one in a closed room. But when you scale that up to 1,000 passive listeners scrolling through their feeds on a Tuesday morning commute, you don't get 3 minutes of their attention.
No, you get maybe 3 seconds. The tolerance for friction drops to near zero in the digital space.
So the podcast intro breakdown provided by these experts outlines 8 highly specific steps to construct a perfect audio hook.
Step 1 is the most critical. Start with a hook. This cannot be a throat-clearing exercise.
No. Hey guys, how's it going?
Never. It needs to be a thought-provoking question or a highly surprising fact delivered the millisecond the audio starts.
You must immediately interrupt the listener's default state of mind. When someone presses play, they are usually distracted driving, washing dishes, checking emails.
You want to shatter whatever mental checklist they are running through and force them to lean into the audio.
Step 2. Introduce the podcast name, establishing the brand. Step 3. Describe the show. But the danger here is merely describing the topic instead of the outcome, right?
Right. You shouldn't just say, this is a show about gardening. You have to focus on the value provided to the listener's life.
This is the show that will help you grow a massive, sustainable harvest in the smallest urban spaces.
You're answering that hidden job interview question again. Why should I listen to you?
Yeah.
You're establishing the return on investment for their time.
Step 4. Welcome the hosts, humanizing the voices. Step 5. Include a call to action. Step 6. Use a catchy tagline, a memorable philosophical anchor that encapsulates the entire brand ethos.
Step 7. Add any necessary disclaimers like explicit language warnings, which is just good housekeeping.
And Step 8. Consider hiring a professional voice actor for the intro to instantly manufacture an incredibly polished, authoritative NPR-level feel.
The structure is incredibly tight, but the execution often falls apart because of one specific element, the intro music.
Oh, this drives me crazy.
Rob Cressy has a very strict, non-negotiable rule regarding music, which is where new creators often bleed listeners without realizing it. He insists on a strict 3 to 10-second rule for intro music.
The amount of times I have clicked on a new show and had to sit through a full minute of an amateur EDM beat before a human voice speaks is staggering. It is infuriating.
It builds massive impatience. The audience is there for the intellectual or entertainment content, not to validate your taste in royalty-free music.
True.
Cressy also advises starting the music in the middle of the track. You completely bypass the slow, atmospheric, cinematic buildup.
You drop the listener right into the peak energy of the song, let it play for 3 to 5 seconds to set the psychological tone, and then immediately fade it out as the voiceover begins.
The music acts as a highlighter for the content. It should never become a distraction.
So a podcast intro is fundamentally the show's elevator pitch. Just as you have to prove your transferable skills to an employer in those first 5 minutes, your podcast intro must instantly prove its transferable value to the listener's daily life.
It is the exact same muscle, just flexed in a different medium.
You are explicitly telling the listener, here is the intellectual mountain we are going to climb today. Here's why reaching the peak matters to you personally, and here's why I am the most qualified guide to take you there.
It's a contractual promise of value, delivered concisely. But once you have made that promise, once you have hooked them with a great intro or a flawless interview pitch, you face the much harder task of actually delivering the content without losing them in the weeds.
Right, you've got them in the door, they bought the ticket to the movie, but now you have to keep them in the theater. If you don't want to start rambling aimlessly 20 minutes into your story, you need an architectural blueprint.
You need a script or an outline. Buzzsprout provides a fascinating breakdown of different structural templates that creators can use depending on the specific dynamic of their show.
Let's go through those.
The first approach is the minimalist or freestyle template. This is essentially a sequence of broad bullet points on a single piece of paper.
It's reserved for creators who are naturally gifted at ad-libbing, right?
Yes, it provides just enough guardrails to keep them from flying completely off the rails, but enough open space to follow a spontaneous, brilliant thought down a rabbit hole.
Then you have the co-host template, which solves a massive auditory problem. If you've ever listened to a remote podcast where two people constantly talk over one another, awkwardly apologize, and then lose the thread of the conversation, it's because they don't have a co-host script.
The template strictly designates who is taking the lead on which topic, passing the baton seamlessly.
Next is the solo host template, which acts as training wheels for beginners. When you're alone in a room, staring at a foam wall and talking into a microphone, the silence can be deafening.
It is incredibly easy to lose your train of thought. This template keeps you anchored to your core thesis.
They also highlight the interview template. And the profound insight here isn't just about how the host uses the script during the recording. It's about the operational strategy of sending that outline to the guest a full week early.
You want your guest to be intellectually prepared, not caught off guard by a difficult question.
When a guest has days to subconsciously process a prompt while walking their dog or taking a shower, the depth and nuance of their answers during the actual recording increases exponentially.
You get their best formulated thoughts, not their panicked first reactions.
There are also highly specific templates for Q&A sessions, step-by-step tutorials, and chaotic roundtable formats. But Rob Cressy's approach to the standard weekly show introduces a fascinating psychological constraint.
He is deeply adamant that you should almost never write a word-for-word script for a standard solo or co-hosted show.
He advocates entirely for a highly structured bullet point outline.
The Cressy formula is elegant. Main point leading directly to a supporting point, backed up by hard data, and punctuated by a memorable quote.
The neurology behind Cressy's aversion to full scripts is about achieving and maintaining a state of flow.
When you are reading a densely written script, your brain is engaged in a mechanical decoding process. You are actively translating text symbols into speech. It takes up cognitive bandwidth.
But when you use a bulleted outline, your brain is engaged in a natural conversational process. You are retrieving concepts from memory and explaining them in real time.
This verbal spontaneity makes you sound profoundly more confident, dynamic, and authentic to the listener.
To ensure those bullet points actually contain material the audience cares about, The sources outline several best practices for preparation. First, rely on keyword research.
Use tools like Answer the Public or Google Trends. You shouldn't just sit in a dark room guessing what your audience wants to know.
You need to look at the aggregate data and see exactly what questions they're typing into search engines at 2 a.m.
Then, construct your outline the way you actually speak. Many top creators use dictation software like Otter.ai or Google Voice.
They pace around their office, talk their messy ideas out loud, get the raw transcript, and use that as the foundation of the outline.
It acts as a filter against using overly academic, stiff, unnatural language.
Finally, you do a dry run. You stand in front of a mirror or use a voice memo app to test the pacing.
Among all these flexible, bullet-driven outlines, the Buzzsprout material does carve out an interesting exception. They specifically detail a fully scripted template.
But wait, if Rob Cressy explicitly argues that a word-for-word script destroys your flow state, engages the decoding part of your brain, and makes you sound unnatural, why on earth is Buzzsprout advocating for a fully scripted template?
I know, it sounds like a contradiction.
That sounds like a guaranteed recipe for sounding like an alien robot reading a textbook and completely alienating the listener.
Well, the fully scripted template is not designed for conversational podcasts. It is highly specialized, generally reserved for heavily produced audio dramas, immersive fiction, or deeply narrative journalistic storytelling.
Think of complex, true crime investigations where the precise legal wording of a court document matters, or historical documentaries where dates and facts must be flawless.
Exactly. But to your point about sounding robotic, the expert secret to pulling this off is the rigorous use of delivery notes.
You mean literally writing stage directions into your own script?
Precisely that. When a professional voice actor or narrative journalist writes a full script, they do not just write the words intended for the audience. They write literal physical cues for themselves.
They insert bracketed text that dictates pacing and emotion.
They will write like, pause for 3 seconds to let the gravity sink in, or take a deep audible breath, or chuckle slightly at the absurdity of this next fact.
They underline words for hard emphasis and use italics for soft delivery. They were artificially constructing the cadence of a natural conversational tone.
It requires treating the script not as a dry document to be read, but as a complex piece of sheet music to be performed.
You're essentially hacking the listener's brain. You're using stage directions to make them feel the intimacy of an off-the-cuff conversation, even though every single syllable and breath was mathematically planned weeks in advance.
That level of control is wild.
We have the intro hooked, we have the architectural structure mapped out, we know whether we're flowing from bullets or performing from delivery notes. But let's look at the reality of human biology.
Even with the greatest script in the world, the human attention span naturally wanders over the course of an hour.
The listener is driving, a car cuts them off, and suddenly they've stopped actively listening. How do you constantly pull them back?
You have to master advanced engagement strategies. You cannot rely on a single linear narrative to hold someone's attention for 60 minutes.
You need to introduce dynamic segments and unique structural formats that act as pattern interrupts, constantly resetting the listener's internal attention clock.
Buzzsprout provides a massive tactical list of 20 different segment ideas. The entire philosophy here is about sectioning off parts of the show to violently reduce listener drop-off.
It's the audio equivalent of a movie director changing the camera angle or cutting to a new scene. It jolts the brain awake.
One highly effective segment is the flashback, where you deliberately recycle old content or update outdated information from a previous year.
This serves a dual purpose. It rewards longtime listeners with a callback, and it introduces new listeners to the depth of your back catalog.
Another incredibly powerful pattern interrupt is the use of games incorporating trivia, rapid-fire questions, or improv segments.
The psychological power of a game is that it instantly converts a passive listener into an active participant.
Even if they're alone in their kitchen washing dishes, their brain cannot resist trying to answer the trivia question before the host reveals the answer. It demands cognitive engagement.
You can strategically deploy sneak peeks, where you tease high-value premium content to drive conversion to a Patreon or a private newsletter.
You can issue challenges directly to the audience, giving them a specific, actionable task and a unique hashtag to use on social media, which transitions the isolated listener into a vibrant community member.
You can weave in random obscure facts, noteworthy industry mentions, quick pop culture reviews to show personality. The combinations are endless. The overarching mandate is simply to break the monotony of a single voice droning on.
If you want to study an absolute masterclass in advanced engagement and authority building, We have to dissect the coaching episode strategy outlined by Podcasting Business School.
Oh, this is a highly specific, high-stakes format designed to skyrocket the host's perceived authority while providing immense value.
The PBS strategy is fascinating because it breaks so many traditional podcasting rules. The core premise is that you bring an actual listener onto the show to coach them through a real-world problem.
But the guardrails they lay out are intensely strict. Rule number 1, you must never, ever charge the guest for these on-air sessions.
You treat this as top-tier, high-value content for your broader audience, not a cleverly disguised, monetized consulting call.
Rule number 2 imposes a merciless 30-minute time limit on the recording. The psychology here is vital.
If you attempt to coach someone on air for longer than 30 minutes, the energy inevitably drags, the conversation circles back on itself, and the listener gets bored.
Furthermore, at that duration, it crosses the line from a punchy audit into a comprehensive service they absolutely should be paying for in private. The sweet spot for a public audit requires tight, focused, relentless momentum.
Which feeds directly into rule number 3. You must focus on going incredibly deep on exactly one major pain point.
You are not there to audit their entire life, redesign their entire business model, or fix their marriage. You identify one specific goal, you pinpoint the exact primary obstacle standing in their way, and you deliver 3 actionable, immediate steps to overcome it.
The operational rigor PBS demands behind the scenes is intense. They utilize a draconian onboarding process solely to filter out uncommitted guests and avoid the dreaded remote no-show.
They force the accepted guest to confirm their attendance by replying to a specific automated email by exactly 6:00 a.m. on the Sunday before the recording.
If the guest misses that arbitrary deadline by even 1 minute, the session is ruthlessly canceled and given to someone else.
It establishes immediate boundaries, filters for highly motivated individuals, and commands professional respect before the microphones ever turn on.
The branding rule they enforce is equally smart. You must never call this segment free coaching.
The word free acts as a magnet for freebie seekers, energy vampires, and people who are not actually serious about implementing advice.
Instead, you elevate the perceived value by labeling it a podcast audit, a strategy session, or a teardown.
But amidst all these rules, PBS introduces a mandate regarding artificial intelligence that feels incredibly pressing for the current technological landscape.
The PBS AI rule draws a very hard line in the sand. Their strategy is uncompromising. Utilize artificial intelligence relentlessly for back-end efficiency, but never, under any circumstances, for human interaction or core ideation.
You can and should use AI tools to generate promotional social media graphics, clean up audio noise, or synthesize raw transcripts into bulleted show notes.
But you must never use an AI chatbot to interact with your listeners via direct messages on Instagram. And you absolutely must never use generative AI to write your core scripts or devise your coaching advice.
Why draw such a rigid line there? If the AI can write a good script faster, why not use it?
Because outsourcing your core ideation to a language model fundamentally depletes your own human creativity over time. It makes your unique voice generic and algorithmic.
More importantly, part of your brand promise, especially in a coaching, consulting, or expert space, is that the audience is paying time and money to connect with your specific, flawed, brilliant, human brain.
If a listener discovers they poured their heart out in a DM or took strategic life advice and it was actually generated by a chatbot, the parasocial trust is instantly, permanently shattered. You cannot automate authenticity.
Let me jump back to the mechanics of the actual coaching format for a second, because there's one rule from PBS that genuinely shocked me when reading through the materials.
The 85% rule.
Yes. They explicitly state that during a recorded coaching episode, the host should be talking 85% of the time. 85%. That feels entirely backwards.
I know, it sounds crazy.
If you bring a guest onto a show, shouldn't it be a dialogue? If the host is talking for 85% of the session, aren't they just delivering a lecture to a captive hostage?
It sounds entirely counterintuitive until you understand the underlying psychological positioning of this specific episode format. This is not a traditional interview episode.
The guest is not there to share their expertise, promote their book, or impart wisdom to your audience.
The guest is there to be coached. The audience is tuning in specifically to hear you, the host, deconstruct a complex problem and build a solution in real time.
By intentionally holding the floor for 85% of the time, you establish absolute, unquestionable expert positioning.
So the guest is basically providing the raw data and the host is the processor.
Exactly. You ask highly targeted surgical questions. The guest provides the raw, messy data of their specific problem.
And then you spend the vast majority of the airtime synthesizing that data, connecting it to broader frameworks, and providing the masterclass solution.
The true magic is that the silent listener at home gets to project themselves into the guest's shoes. They experience the coaching vicariously. The guest acts as an avatar for the audience.
The guest is the canvas, and you are demonstrating your ability to paint. By controlling the conversation flow, you ensure the listener gets the high-density, expert value they tuned in for, rather than listening to a guest ramble about their problems.
We have mapped out the high-stakes intro, the architectural structure, the necessity of flow versus delivery notes, and the advanced engagement segments. We are approaching the end of the narrative arc.
Every good story, every effective movie trailer, requires a memorable, impactful ending.
How do you properly close an episode, and how does that specific mechanic relate back to closing an interview?
Let's examine the podcast outro first. Voice 123 and Rob Cressy detailed the anatomy of a perfect, retention-driving sign-off. It involves 3 highly deliberate steps.
First, you briefly recap the main points. You essentially tell them what you just told them. This cements the value of the last hour in their short-term memory before they take off your headphones.
Second, you deliver a signature sign-off, a consistent, branded phrase that signals the definitive end of the journey, providing closure and building long-term brand loyalty.
And third, you deliver the call to action, the CTA. But there is a massive flashing warning light here, the 1 CTA rule.
This is where greedy creators destroy their own growth. Human beings suffer immensely from decision fatigue and the paradox of choice.
If you reach the end of your show and you say, "Thank you so much for listening," please make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review on Spotify, and follow my personal account on Instagram, and join our private Facebook group, and support us on Patreon, and buy our new merchandise.
The listener will experience cognitive overload and do absolutely none of those things. You have paralyzed them with options.
You must limit the CTA to 1 clear, frictionless, highly specific action. You say, "If you found value in this, answer the pinned question on our latest Twitter post," or leave us a quick voicemail at the link in the show notes.
You give them 1 simple, unmistakable instruction on how to interact with you next.
Now, let's contrast this auditory closing strategy with the physical end of a job interview. Let's trace all the way back to that EY recruiting text.
You're in the conference room. You have just delivered your flawless 3-minute time machine pitch. You have navigated your past impact, your present skills, and your future alignment.
You have proven your strengths with specific stories rather than empty adjectives. You have shown your authentic climb up the mountain. How do you stick the landing without just trailing off into an awkward, terrifying silence?
The EY Playbook says the absolute best, most authoritative way to finish your "tell me about yourself" pitch is to hand the conversation back with a specific guiding question.
Is there anything you may wish to know more about?
It is such an elegant, powerful pivot. You aren't just sitting there waiting for judgment. You are actively facilitating the next phase of the interview.
You are demonstrating executive control, situational awareness, and peer-level confidence.
You are seamlessly transitioning from a monologue back into a dialogue on your own terms.
The ultimate parallel here, the concept that brings this entire deep dive full circle, is that finishing an interview pitch with that specific question is the exact same psychological mechanism as delivering a singular podcast CTA.
In both scenarios, you have just performed your movie trailer. You have demonstrated your immense transferable value.
And instead of just stopping and staring at the other person, hoping they liked it, you are officially, graciously handing the microphone back to them.
You're giving them a clear, simple instruction on how to engage with your narrative next. You are guiding the professional relationship forward.
It all comes down to extreme intentionality. Whether you are speaking to a skeptical hiring committee of 3 people in a corporate office, or a global audience of 30,000 passive listeners on the internet, you are architecting a psychological experience.
You hook them with immediate relevance. You guide them through a structured time machine of value. You engage their attention with authentic struggle and dynamic pattern interrupts. And you close the loop by inviting them into a continued, mutually beneficial relationship.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. From the illusion of the corporate icebreaker and the hidden agendas of recruiters, to the 3-minute time machine framework, the psychology of learning over doing, the 8-step auditory hook, the neurobiology of bullet point flow states versus fully scripted delivery notes, and the intense boundary-driven strategy behind live coaching segments.
The overarching through line of all these diverse sources is abundantly clear. Your narrative is your single most valuable asset. But that narrative, only works. It only converts if it is ruthlessly structured to serve the listener, whether that listener has a six-figure salary to offer you or an hour of their precious time to spend listening to you.
We want to leave you with a final provocative thought to chew on as you go about the rest of your day. If you really step back and look at the macro picture, our professional lives and perhaps even large portions of our personal lives are essentially just a long, continuous series of episodes and pitches.
We are constantly, endlessly introducing ourselves to new contexts, new colleagues, new challenges, and new audiences.
Which means you are never done drafting. You are always in the active process of writing and refining your own script.
So if your life right now is a show, what is the ultimate tagline that you want to be remembered for?
If someone had to step into a production studio right now and write a 10-second intro music drop for your career at this exact specific moment in time, what would it sound like?
Would it be a slow, wandering, uncertain acoustic guitar? Or would it be an upbeat, driving, undeniable rhythm that instantly pulls people in and promises greatness?
Think deeply about how you frame your own narrative in your daily life, because the way you introduce your story to the world is exactly how the world is going to remember it.